Next, we will move to our field assessment guide on the basics of SQL. This will be a fairly walk around to guide you out where we are doing it. Afterwards, we will move on to advanced SQL with cover join statements. This is basically multiple tables together in SQL. And next, second assessment where we will test you guys on the join statements. And finally, we will answer any questions. Yes, you Q&A session at the end, but also whenever you can feel free to hit this video.com with FLIBIO.com and you enter the code 377061 to start the session and answer them at the end. So we're going to do like you can just hit
Justin, wait a minute. I don't know.
hello.
You have to turn it on.
So
237.
237. The code is 23770. They got another screen on. Yeah, 2377061 on radio.com.
Oh, sorry. Been fixed. Sorry about that.
FLIBIO.com and code is 2377061. Especially you can just start asking along the way. Anyone needs more time to go to the website? Okay. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so what is SQL and why is it important for data science activities to learn it?
Sorry?
So I was going to cover what is SQL. SQL is basically it's a structured query language. And the main use of it is basically to just control data which is stored in databases, allowing users to retrieve data whenever they need it. So basically, a database just stores like very large amount of data. Like usually Microsoft Excel can't really handle like this large amount of data without like the whole computer just not functioning. So we store it in a database, and in order to get the data out of the database, we need to use this programming language called SQL to write queries which can extract data from the database. Yeah, and the history of SQL is basically it was developed in the 1970s by Raymond Boyce and Thomas Chamberlain, and the language is and manipulate databases. And secondly, I also mentioned just now that with the increasing amount of data nowadays, more and more companies are using SQL because they can't really handle all the data in normal software like Microsoft Excel. Yeah. And thirdly, another reason why it is good to learn SQL is because it is transferable in many different domains and industries. No matter what industry you go to and look for a job, SQL is definitely always a useful skill that you have. So it's a good idea to learn SQL. So now I'll pass the time on to Christine who will cover the ABCs of querying.
Thank you, Jasmine. Okay, so I'm Christine, and I'll basically be chill by querying, which is like the most important thing you learn first in SQL. So, okay, so firstly, what even is querying, right? Okay, so query is basically a key function in SQL. We are basically asking SQL to pull up certain data from the database. So let's say you're like a HR manager, and then you have a lot of information like your participants, your employees' names, your job titles, as well as their departments. So what happens is that you're able to ask SQL to just pull out this data for you from the database. Next. But before that, let's talk about databases. So what even is a database? So in SQL, we actually use a relational database. So with that, it's basically a collection of tables with rows and columns. So you can kind of imagine it like an Excel file, where you have tables and then you have columns and rows. So in fact, you can actually also import your Excel file into SQL for further manipulation. Okay, so I know you're probably come from very different industries. So for standardization during this workshop, we'll be using the same data set. So let me introduce it to you guys. Okay, let's go back to tool 6 and imagine that you're a part-timer at a DVD rental shop. Okay, and then your boss has already keyed in all the information for you, and you just have to pull in some queries and output some data. So you have 15 tables consisting of things, the sales in stock, the customers, and transactions made. Right, and as I mentioned earlier, all of these tables have their own columns and rows. Okay, so selecting single columns. So what I'm basically doing is asking SQL to pull out this data for you. So this is just one particular column. So let me just teach you guys. So we will have some practical data, but you can listen to the text right now. So I'm writing very general code here. So I just want to let you guys know that when I underline something, I'm basically asking you to input like the column name and the table name. So select uppercase, and then you write your column name, the one that you want to pull out from uppercase, because the keyword, and then you write down the table name that you want to pull this data out from. And then you end it off with a semicolon so the SQL knows that you're ending code. Okay, next. Okay, so let me try this out with you guys. I hope you all downloaded follow the instructions to download PostgreSQL. You guys do it. Okay, I think that's a no. But okay, I'm just gonna code along here, so hopefully you guys learn something. And if you all downloaded it, please follow along. Yeah. Then SQL. Select uppercase. And then your title. Write down title because that's my column name from uppercase. Film, which is my table name. Okay, then you can use the semicolon. So okay, since you guys probably didn't follow the instructions, I'll just give you like a little bit more information about the data set. So one of the tables that we'll be using very frequently during this workshop is the film table. So the name of the table is film, and then it has various column names such as title, the release year, as well as the rating. So these are the columns that we'll be talking about from SQL later on. If you output this, you will get this code. So you have all the list of the titles of the DVDs here. Okay. Okay. So let's not put practices. So I want to show you guys 3 codes, and you guys can let me know which you think will output the right output in SQL. The first, the second, or the third. First one. Yeah, actually it's a trick question because all 3 will work. So yeah, so here in SQL are actually case sensitive. So no matter what you write, you'll actually give out the same output. Okay, however, it is very good practice to make keywords like a select and from uppercase so that when you refer back to it, you know what you're writing, especially if you're working with another data scientist, because this kind of standardization that we use. Semicolon at the end of the code also let SQL know where you're querying at. So even though it's not compulsory, it is very good practice to do this because just like how when you make keywords uppercase, this will help you when you refer back on later. Okay, now that we learn how to select single columns, I'll teach you guys how to select multiple columns. So to select multiple specific columns, you just have to use a comma. So you select uppercase, and then your column name, comma, the second column name, comma, the third, etc., etc. And you can kind of go on forever. Then you from in uppercase because the keyword, and then your table name, semicolon. Let's try it out together. Okay, select title, comma, rating. Okay, release underscore yes. Underscore yes. From film, which is the table name, and then semicolon it. Yeah, and you should get this output. This your title, your rating, and your release year. Okay, so after you select, you love to select multiple specific columns. You might be thinking like, why I want to select all the columns? I can't possibly use the comma. And you might have 1,000 columns, and you have to write 1,000 column names. Obviously not. So what you do if you want to select all the columns is to actually use the asterisk. So we select instead of the column name, use asterisk. from the table name, in this case we'll use film, and then semicolon. Let's try it all together. Nice, and now we have all the columns and rows. Well, if you have any issues, let's be walking around, so please feel free to ask out. Okay. Okay, if you didn't download it, it's fine. You can write down on a piece of paper, but it won't work out because you don't have the data set. But if you did download and follow the three instructions, let's have a quick practice right now. Two questions. I'll probably give you guys 2 to 3 minutes to try out. We'll be walking around, so yeah, feel free to ask. Oh yes, if you have set up issues as well, we'll also be walking around the ground.
No, it doesn't. What seems to be the issue? Yeah, so now save it. Right. Right click to store, yes. The store. Have you? Let me just check this other. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, we can.
We just wrote the link. But you haven't downloaded.
Okay, here, this is what you need to do. So basically go to preferences, file preferences, binary path, right? So then the Postgres SQL 14, right? You need to set it to C/program file Postgres SQL 14/bin. Guys, if you're having and if you're saying that your binary file is not properly configured, go to file, go to preferences. In there will be one folder for path. Go inside there, binary path. Select the Postgres SQL 14 path and save it. It should work.
Okay.
Hello. Okay. Time up. Hopefully you all managed to do something. I'm sure. Okay, so let's try the questions all together. Okay, so the first question is select the type column in the data set. Select length from field, which is the table that you guys to output from. So you should have this. Okay, and then the next question is to select the rental rate, the replacement cost, as well as the rating in the field data set. Okay, so just comment it because it's making multiple columns, and yeah, you should get this as an output. If you have any issues, you can go to the Q&A link and then write down your questions there. Okay, let's move on. Okay, now let's learn how to count. Okay, count is another SQL keyword. It basically returns you the number of rows for the query they ask for. But before that, let's learn what are none and null values. Okay, so none values basically mean not the number. So it's basically talking about results where you have erroneous mathematical computation, such as when you divide your number by 0, obviously it's not going to work out, so you're going to have errors. And then null values are basically when you have missing entries. So no strings, no numbers, literally nothing. So in this situation, we call none and null values missing entries. So obviously when you have rows without any of these two values, we call them non-missing entries. Okay, next. Right. So now we want to count the number of non-missing entries for all columns. Okay, so what we do is select, which is uppercase because it's a keyword, count is also uppercase because it's a keyword. You bracket asterisk because I want the entries for all the columns. From uppercase, the table name semicolon. Okay, so as I said earlier, if any entry has a null or none value, for even one singular column, SQL will not return the entire row. So let's try this out together. Count, and then asterisk from the, and you should get this. So we have 1,000 rows without any missing entries. Okay, next. Okay, so let's say I want the number of non-missing entries for a specific column instead. So now I'm not looking at all columns, but we're just looking at one specific column. So it's pretty similar. Select, count your column name, and then from table semicolon. The syntax should be pretty similar to what we've learned in the past few minutes, so shouldn't be too difficult. So in this situation, if any entry has a null or none value for the column specific, the SQL will not return that row in output. So I think the main difference between using one column and all the different columns using the asterisk is that if you use the asterisk, if even one singular column has a missing entry, SQL will not return the entire row. But in this case, because we're only looking at a specific column, even if that row or the entity has like a missing value, it doesn't matter because we're just looking for the entity, that row in this column. Let's try it out as well. Select count, and then I want a title, which is column name from film, and then yeah, I have 1,000 non-missing rows. Okay, next. Okay, now let's learn how to count the distinct number of entries in the column. So distinct is another SQL keyword. It basically returns you the number of unique entries there. So if you ever have experience with Excel, for example, it's basically like your unique formula. So select, count, bracket, distinct column A, which is a name, and then you bracket it from table. So this should return you the number of unique rows for this particular column from this table. Okay, right. As I mentioned, distinct returns unique values for me, and it can also be used without count. So let's say I want SQL to return me the unique entries for this particular column. I just have to remove the count. So we select distinct and then the column name. Let's try this out over there. Okay, so select distinct, and this time we're looking at the rental rate from film. it's semicolon it and it should be still 1000 because there's no mistake entry, there's no unit entry. Yeah. It's all unit entry. So now I don't want the count, I want the list of all the data in under random rate. I select distinct bracket random rate, which is the column name from field. So I have this. Okay, so these are the only few entries that repeat themselves over and over again in the data from my random rate. Okay, let's do another quick practice. Hopefully this time will be smoother since you should have fixed up your setup. Okay, so let's get the distinct ratings in the field data set. Set timer for maybe 1 or 2 minutes. I will also be moving around, so feel free to ask.
The installation can get quite easier now. So yeah, it's not fun. How do I really install it? Yes, there's a download folder. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. How to input it, is it? Okay, so then you customer just have a file name. Okay. You have this one. Options. All files. Now it should be this. Okay. Just install there. And sure, there you go. Yeah. So try using the tools query tool. Yeah, you are using. Okay, cool. Go install. Oh, okay. So if you don't mind, yeah. So if you saw the document, there's actually error, like this is a very common error, so don't worry about it, okay? So let's go file. And then we go to you know what this means? Okay, so basically it just means that like no, okay. So basically what it means is that like it doesn't know where to place it. So you wants to find where to place it. So like let's say for you, have you resolved? In this case you will resolve. Then until this is where you are. You have it, yeah, I can go ahead. Just go down. Okay. So so we did test really that. So you know, okay. So actually let's go out. There was a potential problem, but now I know it. So we recommend this, and then we go into the binary. Do you know what this involves? No. So basically what our that okay, like for people, I don't know where it is. Yeah, the one right. It's okay. Now we know that it's actually in program files. Okay. Then we just do this and it should come through. From here, then we can start also from here. Then we can start already. What does it mean to do? Basically, we just want to. Yeah. Basically, you want to. So, we want to restore in our ecosystem. So that's what everybody restoring. Yeah. So should be able to go in. But it should be a very good. So like you can just start with and I did one not good time just if you can
Okay, let's get back to work. Okay, so we want the number of distinct ratings from the field. What number we list? Number.
Yeah, no. I mean, this thing.
The distinct rating. So select counts, bracket distinct, and then rating. From field, rating.
Sorry.
Okay, then you should get 5 because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Next. Okay, now move on. Pass the mic to Kang Yang talk about your things.
Hey everyone, we talked about filtering your results. So let's get this started. Okay, let's talk about why filter our results, right? So essentially, in our data set, there's a lot of data. So what we want to do is essentially we want to cut down on that data such that we are able to find meaningful data to whatever we are using. So for example, let's say in the film data set, right? We just want to see like what movies are like for children, so like G-rated or something like that. That's what we can do. And that basically gives rise to more meaningful visualizations in the future when, let's say, we want to visualize our data and things like that. So let's start with the most basic filter there is, the where keyword. So what this where operator essentially does is that, wait, hold on. Okay, sorry. So essentially what this where keyword does is that it establishes a condition that you can state while querying. So can we try that? Actually, let's just go into PJ a bit.
Sorry.
So let's say, for example, we want to query something whereby, let's say we want to query something from typo whereby the rental rate is less than 3. So we can do select typo from field. Where rental underscore rate less than 3. Rental underscore rate less than 3. Get this one. Less than 3. So if we actually run that. Oh, without mic here. Okay, cool. Sorry.
Okay.
Can we tell? Okay, so sorry about that. So basically, if you want to find titles whereby rental rate is less than 3, we just query this. So our condition is essentially rental rate less than 3, and we get all these titles. So yeah, can we go on to the next slide, please? Is clear? Okay, thank you so much for the feedback. Appreciate it. All right, so some of you guys might be asking, like, what is that less than sign for? Well, this is where we cover the operators. So if you're familiar to coding, this should be kind of familiar to you, but there are some differences in SQL. So for example, the equal to operator is not 2 equal signs, it's just 1 equal sign, right? As for the other operators, they are more or less the same, but for people without programming experience, let's just go through some of these, all right? So if we have a more than sign, that just means more than, less than sign is less than. If we want to include a certain value in our where, right? So for example, we want a rental rate that's $3 or more. So we can do more than or equals to, same thing for less than or equals to, and I know for a lot of you, not equal to usually means exclamation mark equals, but in this case, it's not. It is actually less than, more than. All right, next slide, please. So how are we going to have more than one condition in our filtering? So what we can do is that we can add in an AND condition. So this AND operator, right? It essentially allows us to have 2 or more conditions within the query itself. So let's try it out. So for example, if we want the rental rate to be less than 3, and we want the rating to be PG, right? So we'll do select title from film, where rental rate less than 3, and what exactly do I want just now? Rating equals to PG. So if we were to query this, so this is what we should get. We'll get a whole table of titles. So do note that if you guys want to like call a string, it is only one inverted, yeah, quotation mark instead of 2. So yeah. So let's go back to the slides. All right. So let's say we want a query whereby either condition actually works. So in this case, we'll be using or instead. So for example, if I wanted like child-friendly movies only, right? So either G or PG for our rating. So we can do that. So let's go into PG admin. Okay, so let's just remove the rental rate less than 3 and okay, sure, no worries. We'll just redo the query itself. Select title from film, where rating equals G, and rating equals PG. So essentially with that, we'll be able to, oh sorry, rating equals PG, my bad, that is my bad. So essentially we'll be able to get all the titles. Don't worry about it.
But essentially we'll be able to get all the titles whereby rating equals G or rating equals PG. So it will be very useful for our query in the event that we want to do, let's say we want to count the number of ratings, count the number of titles whose ratings are G or PG. So let's go back to our slides. No, they cannot see where to share. Yeah. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties, give us a while. Why not just share out? Yeah. All right. Okay, cool. We're back. So that's how we use the OR operator. Next slide, please. So let's say if we want a range where in our query, right? So let's say we want a rental rate between 1 and 5. We can use between. So can we go into pgemin? So in this case, I said 1 and 5. So let's go select title from film where in this case, rental underscore rate between 1 and 5. So for numbers in this case, you don't need inverted comma or anything like that. You just write it as it is. Then just press F5. And we'll get all the titles from there. Okay, let's go back to slides. So just share screen. Then don't have to keep changing. Only press. So quick practice, we'll give you 2 more minutes for this query itself. So don't be afraid to ask any of us. All right, thank you. Do you guys need any help? Sorry about that.
I'm taking the database and
we gave you some data, right? Download the data. Yeah, okay. Then take a chart, like, go to your file. extract, right? Go to select that directory in here. Yep.
All right, 2 minutes is up. So let's talk about the query itself. So can we get the query up, the PG admin? Thank you. So what was the question? The question was, using a film database, find the number of films that have a replacement cost between $10 and $15 with a rental rate of $4.99 and above. So first of all, you already can tell that there are two conditions, right? So the first condition is the replacement rate. The replacement rate is between $10 and $15, if I'm not wrong, right? And what was the second one? The second one was essentially, we are finding a rental rate of $4.99 and above. So because of that, we've already established our two conditions, right? Let's just write it out. So we just want to find a number of films. So that would be count. So select count. Distinct the one. Okay, just so select count, distinct, count film ID from film. Right, since we essentially want the number of films from there, where so replacement cost between 10 and 15 and rental rate more than $4.99. No, the operator, yeah. Oh, good. So usually what I'll do is that I'll actually draw back, we will need the brackets. So we will definitely need the brackets for this. So the brackets will be between replacement cost and 15. So that's the first condition, right? And the second condition will be rental rate more than $4.99. No.
Before replacement cost.
Yeah. So if you run it, oh, that's it. Hold on. Sorry, give us a while. Okay. So it will be more than equals to 4.99. Sorry about that. So you should get 84 as your answer. And we can just move on. All right. So once we talk about filtering your data, right, we have to talk about ordering your data, because some might like your data to be ordered such that essentially maybe you want to see what is like. In this case, if we're talking about a film data set, let's talk about the last five films in terms of like title, right? So we want to find the last 5 films, we can just do that. And we also can limit our query. So we can make it such that the output only releases 5. So, or maybe 10 or 20, depending on what you want. So let's just try this out right now. So for example, if I want to just see like the titles in alphabetical order, but from behind. So select all from title, order by title descending. Yes, here. Right. Order by title. No. Sorry about that. Give us a while. So select all from film, order by title descending. So if we press F5, we should be able to see that the title starts from Zoroark all the way down to Young Language. And like da 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 da. So if we were to limit this query, right, what we can do is simply limit 5, and we F5 it, and we are able to get everything from the film data set, whereby the title is in descending order and only five data points. So now that we're done with ordering and limiting, right, we're going to go into group by. So you might be asking, what good is group by? What exactly is group by? So essentially what we're doing is that we're grouping rows with the same values into summary rows. Like, for example, if we were to find the number of customers in each country. So I know that might not exactly be a very good explanation right now, but maybe once I code it, you guys will understand things better. All right, so let's go into pgadmin. So for example, if I want to see how many people are renting this at different price points, right? We can just do that. So we can just select amount, count, customer ID from payment, and then we group by the amount. And just to make things a bit nicer, right? We can order by amount ascending. So with F5 that, we should be able to see what amounts and how many customers are renting at the amounts. So if we look through the table, right, we realize that there are people renting at 499 and there are people renting at 299. Well, the most number of people that are renting at 499 and 299. So we haven't talked about aggregate functions yet, but essentially you need these aggregate functions in order to actually use a group by. So we have covered count already. So if you guys remember what count is, it's just counting the number of rows in a specified column. We have sum, which adds everything together in said specified column. We have the minimum value, which is min. We have maximum value, which is max. And if we want to get the average of one column itself, right, if it's numerical, of course, then we just use average. So another quick practice. I know there are a lot of quick practices, but let's just get this into our ecosystem. Let's just get this in our blood, right? So using the film database, find the average replacement cost for each rating and round off to 2 decimal places. So just a note, use the round function itself. I know we have not taught you guys that, but it's there for you guys to just figure it out. All right. So yeah. Okay. All right, so 2 minutes is up and we'll be talking about the quick practice solution itself. So if we were to go to pgadmin right now, we just clear this. So we want to find the average replacement cost for each rating and round off to do 2 decimal places, right? So the average replacement cost, we will need to group them by group by function. So it's essentially we'll be grouping by each rating. Wait, let me just make sure that, okay, yeah. And essentially we have the replacement cost in our data set as well as the rating, and we just round off to 2 decimal places. So essentially what we want to do is we want to search, we want to find rating, right? And we want to round this replacement cost by 2 decimal places from film. And we want to group this by rating. So if you guys see, there'll be PG, RG, PG13, and C17. So these are the values itself. If there are any questions, do let us know. I know that it can get a bit confusing, but essentially how I would approach this question is essentially selecting rating first, of course, because there's nothing much you can do about that, except that like you have to group it by rating. So what happens in the group by statement is that you have to select the column that you're grouping by. And as for the replacement cost, that's what we are using the aggregate function for. So average replacement cost, and then we round that average replacement cost to 2 decimal places. All right. So we'll be going to our first assessment. Jaslyn, please take over.
Okay, so now we will be moving on to our first assessment. I know you guys may be quite tired of the quick practices, but in order to make sure that you take away something from this workshop, we want to help you guys practice your skills. So without further ado, we'll get into the testing you guys on the basics of SQL. Is everyone okay?
Yes.
Anyone still need more time for the previous quick practice? Okay. Okay, so for the first assessment, right, we will be using the customer database, and we will, so for the first question, you will have to print the first and the last names of the first 5 customers in ascending order of their first name. Some rules is that obviously you have to use order by, and then this involves to give you a clue on which column you should use. And first 5, so you can limit the number of rows. So for the second question, you guys are supposed to use the payment database, and you guys are supposed to find out how many rentals are between $1 and $5. So yeah, you can use the between keyword for this. For the third question, you guys are supposed to use the payment database again and find out the 5 DVD rental customers who have spent the most money. So obviously you have to return the 5 top standing, so the 5 highest value rows. So you can think about how you want to order the rows. And for this assessment, we will give you guys a lot more time, so there will be like about 25 minutes or 10 minutes for this assessment. Yeah. So it doesn't matter if you guys don't get everything correct, because we'll go to the answer.
So clear, this will be great.
You guys can feel free to ask us, we'll be walking around.
What is it? Oh, then, okay. Unscripted right? I will accept the directory that results from it. Yeah, the things that like some installations are weird about this.
One more minute. Okay, time's up. Now we will start going through the questions, the answers for the first assessment. Okay, so for the first question, you need to use the customer database and you print the first and last names of the first 5 customers. Hello, is everyone okay? Yeah. Yeah. So you print the first and last names of the first 5 customers in ascending order of their first name. So straight away, you know the functions you need to use. The keywords you need to use are order by, ascending, and then you need to take the first and last names as your column, and you need to limit the number of rows by 5. So we will now write this out in people. Okay, so you just select your first name, first underscore name, last underscore name column from customer table, and you order by first name ascending because you want the ascending names, yeah. And you limit the number of rows written by 5, so you only get the in alphabetical order the top 5 names. Yeah, so we run this and we get Aaron, Adam, Adrian, Agnes, Ellen, yeah, and their last names don't matter, I guess. Okay, moving on. Okay, yeah. So for the next question, right, we were supposed to use the payment database and we are supposed to find out how many rentals are between $1 and $5. So straight away, you know that you have to use the between keyword, right? And also the and keyword. And we will get the columns from the payment database. So let's code this out. So you select count the number of rows. So accelerate is the number of rows from the payment table. And then where the amount is between 1 and 5. And then we run this. And we get 8,234. So everyone okay? Okay. Okay, for the next question, we are supposed to select the customer ID column and we're supposed to select the customer ID column, and then we're supposed to return the sum of the amount column from the payment table. And then we group this by the customer ID and we order by the sum of amount descending. And then we limit the number of rows returned by 5. So if you're confused by the order by statement, basically you focus on so basically you take the sum of the amount and you will return the sum of the amount. So it will order the rows by the sum of the amount, not the amount column itself, but the sum of the amount. So it will return it in descending order and you limit it by 5. Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's move on. So now we move on to joint statements and I'll pass the time on to Kwang Yang.
Thank you so much, Jesslyn. We'll be talking about joint statements. So this is slightly more complicated. Sorry about that. This is slightly more complicated because essentially what joining is basically we're joining two tables together and then resulting in output from that. But there are different types of joins. And if you guys aren't familiar with a Venn diagram, that's all right. We'll be showing you the result so that it's a bit more familiar to you guys. But those who understand what a Venn diagram is, you guys should be kind of familiar with the concept because essentially it's just intersection, union, and like you want to A prime, like, sorry, A intersect B prime, B intersect A prime, this kind of stuff, right? So let's start with inner join. So inner join basically selects records that have matching values in specified columns in both tables. Okay, so if we were to do an inner join, right? So let me just introduce you guys to 3 more tables, right? Don't be afraid. They're essentially one of them is actually what I've been using, and I'll explain the other 2 later. So let's just take a look at join 1 first. This is something I've created. So essentially this is from the film table, with the film ID and the description itself. So we have the film IDs from 1 to 10, right? And from join 2, what we have is the film category table. So this film category table, right? Basically what it does is just that it has a film and what the category is, but they are both in IDs. So if you look at this table itself, right, you realize this doesn't give me much info. Why? Or like, I don't know what this is about, right? But what we can do is we can do a join. So what we do is we select everything from join 1 and we inner join it with join 2 on join 1 dot film ID equal, join 1 dot film ID equals to join 2 dot film ID. So what this essentially does is that it will take one column that's similar between both tables, right? And then it will join the tables together. So if you look at this, if I were to run this right now, this is the result. So it has film ID, description, film ID, and category together. But if you're wondering why join 1 has like 10 data points, but join 2 only has 5 data points, and the inner join only gives us 5 data points, right? This is essentially what inner join is. It's the intersection between both of these tables. So what happens if we want all 10 data points? That's where we go into full outer join, or we call it full join. So full join returns all records when there is a match in both tables for the specified column. So going back to VJ admin again, if we were to just change this into full join, you realize that we have effectively just joined both of these tables together, right? So it's everything included. But that also means that because join 2 has only 5 data points, right? So the rest of film ID and category ID in that will be null. Does that make sense? So this is inner join and full join. I know that this concept might be a bit complicated, but I hope that with these code snippets, right, you'll understand at least a little bit better in terms of what the joins do, right? I hope everything is clear so far. So yeah, so there is inner join, there's full join, and we have left join and right join. So left join and right join might be a bit more complicated, but let me show you what we can actually do with more than one join. If you guys are interested in that, well, I'm showing you anyways, so, but yeah. So we can actually do more than one join. So let's say we would have to, if we wanted 3 tables joined together, right? That's what we can do. But I will do a full join on join 1 and join 2. And then with this result, I'll join with join 3. So you might be wondering what join 3 is. So let's just look at join 3 first, right? So join 3 essentially is just 2 data points with category ID and name for 6 and 8. So basically, it just tells us what the ID is relating to for the name. So category ID 6's name is documentary and 8 is family, right? So let's go back to this. If we were to do inner join on join 3 on join 2 dot category ID equals to join 3 dot category ID, and if we were to do it inner join for both of them, actually, what we will get is, first of all, let's remove the second inner join. Let's look at the first inner join, right? So we only have film IDs 1 to 5 with category IDs 6, 8, and 11. So if we were to inner join it again, we would only result with 1, 3, and 5. But in this case, you'll see that the category IDs match. So this is what we can do with more than one join. All right. So now that we're done with that, let's look at left join, right? So in this, okay, wait, let's go back to slide first. Sorry about that. So what a left join is essentially it returns all records from the left table which match with the right table for the specified column. So I'll give you an example because this can be also very confusing. All right. So if we were to do from join 2 and we were to left join 1 on join 2 dot film ID equals to join 1 dot film ID, and with the F5 it, this is our result. Okay, wait, hold up. I think it would be easier if I were to inner join if I were to inner join everything. And then we'll left join with join 3. So in this case, if you recall what join 3 was 6 and 8, right? Documentary family. So what happens is that in the left join, the 2 films with the category ID of 11, they don't have the thing itself. So what we want is what a left join essentially is we're taking everything from the first table and everything that joins together with the second table. Then everything else is null. Does that make sense? And the same will go for right join as well. So right join is the opposite of left join. So if we were to actually flip, if we were actually do right join, right? On this, it won't really show us anything. But conceptually, what happens is that we assume, okay, let's assume this table, the inner join table, as one table, right? And then what right join is essentially is just the opposite of left join. So they're the same concept, just that the placement is different. Sorry, I know that was a bit confusing, but yeah, so left join, right join, they're almost the same thing. So you might be asking, why, if we have left join, what do we need right join, right? Well, the thing is that sometimes you want to combine more than two tables. You want to combine 3, 4 tables, this kind of thing. This is where left join and right join comes in. Because you can't necessarily use left join all the time. You have to use right join. Yeah. So I hope the explanation was clear enough. If there are any questions in chat, please feel free to ask them right now. Because I know that this concept can get confusing. But we'll just head into our second assessment. Hui Sing, you want to take over?
Okay, let's move on to the second assessment. I'm not sure if you guys. Okay, I'm not sure if you guys have enough time, so feel free to leave later on if you have to list already. We'll send you guys some slides with the answers later on, so you can try it out on your own. Louder. So that you guys can try it out for yourself later on. Okay, so here's the second assessment. Yeah, as I said earlier, y'all can go if y'all need to. Okay, but here we'll give you about 10 minutes maybe to try. Should I just flash answer? Should I just say the answer? Okay, due to lack of time, we'll just be going through the answers. Okay, so the first question is to find the emails of the customers who are in the Taipei district. So we need to give you guys the two tables you need to join, so you guys to explore the data set a little bit more. Okay, this is to promote a bit of thinking where you guys might get the sick data. Okay, so we can do the estimate for this table because we didn't exactly state what exactly we wanted here. There is a link between the address ID and the customer's address ID, and therefore we can do a join from here. And then the inner join will allow us to take the data points we need without creating new data points with the incomplete information. So what you do is you select asterisk because you want all of it from address table, inner join, which is the second data, the second table that you want to join it with, on address dot address ID customer dot ID. Where the district is actually Taipei. A single quote. Okay, so should get this answer. Yeah, as I said earlier, we'll send you guys the slides with the answer, so it's fine if you don't want to leave now. Okay, the second part, basically to find the title of the movies that Zero Cage has starred in. This question is a lot more difficult than the previous one, because in this case, you actually need two joins. So you can think about the data set as a whole. You need the actor table for Zero Cage and the film table for the titles of the movies. So there is a table that links both the film and actor table together, namely the film _ actor table. Therefore, we have to interjoin both of them as it works as kind of like a bridge. So we select title, first name, because you're looking for Zero Cage. From actor, which is the table, inner join the film actor, which is your second table. On actor ID, because film the ID, because they have two columns to match, and then join again fill with the next table where your first name equals to 0 and your last name equals to 8. So sorry, I forgot about the film. ID equals to film. Okay, so this should be our output. Right, thank you so much for joining us for the workshop. So if you all have any questions and you all still have time, you all can feel free to ask it now. We'll go through it in your
Okay, let's just answer a few questions from Slido itself. So, hold up, give me a while. Let me. Okay, so what does unique mean for select distinct? Is ABC in data same as ABC? Answer is, if I'm not wrong, yes. So, because like, if we do programming, we realize that ABC and capital A, B, capital C, right? They are essentially two different strings. So if we were to actually equate them, it will come out with false. So I hope that answers your question. Where does Python and its libraries come to play? How's this entire cycle like? I can't give you an exact answer for that. But what I can say is that there are libraries in Python that actually allow you to connect to SQL, and then you can like configure stuff from there. There's also, if I'm not wrong, there's this thing called PostgreML. So that uses Python itself and actually like links everything with SQL and things like that. I hope my answer is actually kind of sufficient for you. If not, please do elaborate on your answer and I'll see if I can help you from there. Is a single quotation mark syntax for strings unique to PostgreSQL? To my knowledge, I don't think so. But I'm not too sure about that. I believe
let you use the single quotation for strings or double quotation.
Right. Okay. Hope that answers your question. What's the level where you are proficient enough to claim on your CV I can use SQL? Okay, no, that's a very valid question, right? Everyone wants to know how do I incorporate SQL into my resume? And that's fine. I would say that first of all, this workshop itself is not enough. It's an introduction to SQL, obviously, but there's a lot more other stuff that we've not really covered. So like primary keys, foreign keys, things like that. There'll be also things whereby you link it to different languages, because ultimately it is a database system, right? And you use the language to query the database system and things like that. So because of that, like, I think if you want to claim on your CV that you can use SQL, you probably have to learn like more stuff about like SQL. So for example, creating tables, inserting stuff into tables, dropping tables, things like that. So I hope that answers your question.
Wait, can I add on?
Okay.
Okay, basically, right, for me, I have been in that position before. Like, I didn't learn SQL in my course at all. And I wanted to tell people that I knew how to do SQL. So what I did was, I went to data camp, I did introduction to SQL, intermediate SQL, and I got all the certifications. Then after that, I went to HackerRank. I did a certification test. So I have like the certified introduction to SQL, but you can do it at like, you can do the certification test at like basic, intermediate, and advanced level. I think once you get like those HackerRank certification, you can sort of claim on your CV that you know how to use SQL, like, because by then you would have like an actual proof that you know how to do SQL. So you just like search online for these kind of websites to get certificates for it.
I hope you heard Justin's response to that. So we'll just mark that as answered. If there's anything more, do let us know. In assessment 1, question 2, is there a difference? Okay, is there a difference between selecting this and selecting asterisk and selecting customer ID? So selecting asterisk take longer because it is querying all the columns, yes, you are right. There is definitely a difference. But I'll say that the difference in terms of your computing power. So let's say if you were to run a whole desktop with this query, right? Then like obviously it won't make that big of a difference because it's in terms of milliseconds only. But let's say we were to have like a data set with like, let's say a few million data points, right? Then it will make difference. So yes, you're right in saying that asterisk will take longer because of querying all the columns. But actually, yeah, that's the answer. So hope that answers your question. Is there any other questions from our live audience? I think that's about it. So if you guys have any other questions, do let us know. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for coming down.
Thank you.
There's still some food and drinks at the back, so if you want, you can just get it.
All right.